The Avengers were supposed to protect the world, but after years of destruction, collateral damage, and lives lost, the world begins asking who's keeping the Avengers in check. Taking place shortly after the events of Avengers Age of Ultron and serving more as an Avengers 2.5, this is Captain America Civil War. The story begins in 1991. Deep inside a Hydra facility in Siberia, a familiar weapon is awakened. A man sits restrained in a chair. His eyes are blank, his mind no longer his own. Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier. Hydra operatives recite a series of trigger words, wiping away whatever remains of the man he used to be. Soon after, Bucky intercepts a car traveling along a snowy highway. Inside is a case containing samples of the Super Soldier Serum. Before the mission is over, the Winter Soldier completes his objective and disappears into the night. In the present day, the Avengers launch a mission in Lagos, Nigeria. The team includes Steve Rogers, Captain America, Natasha Romanoff, Sam Wilson, Falcon, and Wanda Maximoff. Their target is former Hydra operative Brock Rumlow, aka Crossbones, now leading a terrorist group attempting to steal a biological weapon. The Avengers intercept the group as they attempt to escape with the weapon, and the fight quickly spills into the streets in a crowded marketplace. Eventually, Steve corners Rumlow, but before the fight can end, Rumlow tells Cap that his friend Bucky is still alive. Steve is caught off guard for just a moment, and it gives Rumlow enough time to detonate a suicide bomb meant to kill them both. Wanda reacts instantly. Using her powers, she pulls the explosion away from Steve, but the blast still hits a nearby building and kills several people, including humanitarian workers from the reclusive nation of Wakanda. The mission succeeds, but the damage is undeniable. The world has had enough. At Avengers headquarters, Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross arrives with a proposal: the Sokovia Accords, a United Nations agreement designed to place the Avengers under international oversight. From now on, the team would only act with the government approval. The room fractures almost immediately. Tony Stark supports the Accords. After everything that happened with Ultron and the destruction of Sokovia, Tony believes accountability is necessary. But Steve disagrees. Governments have agendas, and if the Avengers surrender their independence, innocent people could pay the price. The Avengers are divided. Around the same time, Steve suffers another personal loss. After a long life, Peggy Carter passes away. The woman Steve once loved, and the last living connection to the life he left behind in the 1940s, Steve attends her funeral, where he learns that Sharon Carter is actually Peggy's niece. During the service, Sharon reflects on the kind of person Peggy was. She recalls Peggy's beliefs that, when you know something is right, sometimes you have to stand your ground, even if the world is telling you to move. For Steve, the words couldn't come at a more important time. With the debate over the Sokovia Accords continuing to divide the Avengers, Peggy's message only strengthens his resolve to stand by what he believes is right. World leaders gather in Vienna to ratify the Sokovia Accords. Among them is T'Chaka, the king of Wakanda. But before the agreement can be finalized, a bomb detonates. The explosion kills King T'Chaka and several others. In the aftermath, security footage appears to identify the bomber, the Winter Soldier. Now Wakanda's prince, T'Challa, vows to hunt him down and make him pay. But Steve isn't convinced. If Bucky is truly responsible, then why does it feel like someone is trying to frame him? And if Bucky is innocent, then the real bomber is still out there. Believing Bucky may have been framed, Steve and Sam track him to Bucharest. They find him hiding in a small apartment, living off the grid and struggling to piece together the fragments of his past. Bucky barely remembers who he used to be. Before they can learn much more, the authorities arrive. Bucky runs and Steve gives chase. But before Steve can catch up, Bucky is suddenly pounced on by a silent figure armed with razor-sharp claws. The Black Panther of Wakanda. T'Challa is here for revenge. What follows is a chaotic chase through the city. The Winter Soldier, Captain America, and Black Panther tear through the streets as police pursue them from every direction. Cars crash and buildings are damaged, and T'Challa relentlessly hunts the man he believes murdered his father. Eventually the chase comes to an end, and Bucky, Steve, and T'Challa are all taken into custody by James Rhodes, also known as War Machine. While Bucky is being held for questioning, a man posing as a psychiatrist is granted access to the facility. His name is Helmut Zemo. Once alone with Bucky, Zemo recites a series of Hydra trigger words, activating the Winter Soldier programming once again. Almost instantly, Bucky loses control. The Winter Soldier breaks free and tears through the facility. escaping even as Natasha Romanoff, T'Challa, and even Tony Stark without an Iron Man suit try to stop him. Amid the chaos, Zemo escapes. Steve eventually catches up to Bucky and helps bring him back to his senses. Once Bucky regains control, he finally understands what Zemo is after. During the interrogation, Zemo asked about a secret Hydra facility in Siberia, a facility where 5 other Winter Soldiers are being kept in cryogenic storage. Unlike Bucky, these soldiers never escaped Hydra's control, and if Zemo reaches them first, the world could be facing 5 more assassins just as deadly as the Winter Soldier. Knowing Zemo is headed for Siberia, Steve refuses to wait for government approval. If Zemo reaches the facility first, 5 more Winter Soldiers could be unleashed on the world. And Steve knows he'll need help, so he puts together a team. Joining him are Bucky and Sam. Steve then turns to an old friend for help, Clint Barton, Hawkeye. Clint travels to the Avengers compound where Wanda has effectively been placed under house arrest following the events in Lagos. Although Wanda and Vision have grown close, Wanda helps Clint fight past him and escape the compound. Meanwhile, Sam reaches out to someone he recently met during the events of Ant-Man, Scott Lang. On the other side, Tony remains determined to enforce the Sokovia Accords. With Rhodey and Natasha at his side, Tony also recruits T'Challa and a young hero from Queens. The two sides finally meet at a German airport. Tony, Rhodey, and Nat confront Steve and give him one final chance. Turn over Bucky. Steve refuses, and that's when Tony reveals a surprise. Suddenly, Captain America's shield is ripped from his hand. A web shoots across the airport, binding Steve's arms together. As everyone looks up, a young hero lands flawlessly with Cap's shield in hand. Spider-Man. Before anyone can react, Rhodey spots Bucky and Sam attempting to slip past the standoff. T'Challa immediately steps forward. He's mine. But Team Cap has a surprise of their own. A tiny figure suddenly appears on Cap's shield. Scott Lang. Ant-Man grows to full size, knocking Spider-Man backward and returning Cap's shield. And with that, the fight begins. Spider-Man takes on Bucky and Falcon, constantly talking and throwing out jokes as if he's meeting his heroes instead of fighting them. Underneath the excitement, however, it's clear he's far more capable than anyone expected. Captain America finds himself battling both Black Panther and War Machine, while Ant-Man squares off against Black Widow, underestimating her experience. Wanda and Hawkeye work together to keep Iron Man occupied. Team Captain America begins gaining the upper hand and makes a run for the Quinjet. But before they can escape, Vision appears and blocks their path. He calmly tells them to surrender. Everyone stops. For a moment, the airport falls silent, and then both sides form up. Steve stands at the front with Bucky, Falcon, Ant-Man, Wanda, and Hawkeye behind him. Across from them, Tony is joined by War Machine, Black Widow, Spider-Man, Vision, and Black Panther. Cap refuses to back down and charges forward. The others follow. Tony does the same, and with that, the real fight begins. An epic clash erupts across the airport as former teammates battle one another. For a while, neither side can gain a decisive advantage, but eventually Sam realizes they're wasting too much time. If Zemo is going to be stopped, only a few of them can make it to Siberia. The rest of Team Cap will hold the line while Steve and Bucky make a run for the Quinjet. Before they split up, Scott reveals he has one final trick up his sleeve. On his signal, Steve and Bucky need to run. Moments later, Ant-Man activates something even Tony's team wasn't expecting. He grows and grows and grows, transforming into Giant Man. In an instant, the tide of the battle turns. Team Iron Man scrambles to contain the massive new threat as Steve and Bucky make their escape. But then Spider-Man comes up with an idea. Drawing inspiration from what he calls a really old movie, The Empire Strikes Back, Peter remembers how the rebels brought down the giant walkers on Hoth. Using his webs, Spider-Man wraps up Giant Man's legs, creating an opening for Tony and Rhodey. Working together, Iron Man and War Machine unleash a combined aerial punch. The combined assault finally brings Giant Man crashing to the ground. Scott reverts back to normal size, out of energy, but he accomplished exactly what he set out to do. He bought Steve and Bucky the time they needed to escape. They reach the Quinjet, but just before they can leave, they're intercepted by Nat. For a moment, it looks like the escape is over. Then Natasha makes her choice. Instead of stopping Steve and Bucky, she turns and fires her Widow's Bite into T'Challa, temporarily disabling him. It gives Steve and Bucky exactly what they need. A few precious seconds, and that's enough. As Steve and Bucky make their escape aboard the Quinjet, Rhodey pursues them in the War Machine armor. Trying to buy them a few more seconds, Falcon attacks from behind, peppering Rhodey with aerial fire. Rhodey tells Vision to stop Sam. Vision is focused on an injured Wanda, slightly distracted. Attempting to stop Falcon, he fires a blast intended to disable Sam's wings and turn them into little more than a glider. But Falcon dodges. The beam misses its target. Instead, it strikes War Machine's arc reactor. Rhodey's suit immediately loses power. Tony watches in horror as his friend falls from the sky. Both Iron Man and Falcon dive after him, but neither reaches him in time. Rhodey crashes into the ground with a devastating thud. The battlefield falls silent. Rhodey is alive, but unconscious, and his injuries will change his life forever. Meanwhile, Steve and Bucky successfully escape. The rest of Team Captain America is arrested and transported to the Raft, a high-security prison built to hold the world's most dangerous superpowered criminals. The battle is over, and the Avengers have never been more divided. In a helicopter on the way to the Raft, Tony begins piecing together the truth. After reviewing new evidence and meeting with Sam Wilson, he realizes Bucky was framed for the Vienna bombing. The real terrorist was never the Winter Soldier. It was Zemo. Understanding Steve may have been right all along, Tony sets aside their differences and travels to Siberia alone. There he finds Steve and Bucky already inside the Hydra facility. For a brief moment, it seems the three may finally begin working together again. But when they reach the cryogenic chamber, they discover something unexpected. The 5 Winter Soldiers are already dead. Zemo killed them. Because they were never the point. Zemo didn't bring the Avengers here to unleash an army. He brought them here to destroy each other. You see, Zemo is from Sokovia. During the battle between the Avengers and Ultron, the city was devastated. Zemo lost his son and his wife, and ever since, he has wanted revenge. But Zemo understands something most villains don't. He can't defeat gods and super soldiers. He can't defeat the Avengers in a fight. And if he can't destroy the Avengers himself, he'll make them destroy each other. Zemo plays a security recording from 1991. The footage shows Bucky intercepting a car along a snowy road, the same car carrying the super soldier serum. But the people inside are Howard and Maria Stark. Tony watches in silence as the truth unfolds. The Winter Soldier murders both of them. Then Tony turns to Steve. "You knew?" Steve doesn't answer, but he doesn't have to. And in that moment, the last thread holding the Avengers together finally snaps. Consumed by grief and anger, Tony attacks. Steve tries to explain that Bucky had no control over his actions, that Hydra was responsible, but Tony isn't listening. All he can see is the man who murdered his parents. What follows is one of the most brutal fights in MCU history. Iron Man against the Winter Soldier, and Iron Man against Captain America. Steve tries to help Bucky escape, but Tony cuts off every route out of the bunker. Realizing there is no way out, Bucky takes the fight directly to Iron Man. Soon, Steve joins him. Working together, the two begin gaining the upper hand. Tony takes a beating as Captain America and the Winter Soldier overwhelm him with coordinated attacks, passing the shield back and forth and hammering Iron Man from every angle. But Iron Man isn't finished. Tony knocks Steve backwards with a powerful repulsor blast. Bucky immediately takes advantage of the opening. Slamming Tony into a wall, he pins him in place and begins using his metal arm to rip out Iron Man's arc reactor. For a moment, it looks like Tony is finished. Then Iron Man unleashes a devastating unibeam blast directly from the arc reactor. The blast tears through Bucky's metal arm, ripping it from his body. A follow-up repulsor blast sends Bucky crashing across the bunker, taking him out of the fight. Now it's just Tony and Steve. At first, Captain America begins gaining the advantage, with unrelenting hits on Iron Man. But Tony activates his suit's combat analysis system. The AI studies Steve's fighting style, predicting his attacks and countering them in real time. The momentum shifts and Tony starts beating Steve down. Again and again. But Steve refuses to quit. "I can do this all day." Just as Iron Man appears ready to finish the fight, Bucky reaches out and grabs Tony's leg. The distraction is all Steve needs. He charges forward, lifts Tony from behind, and slams him into the ground. Then Steve begins driving the edge of his shield into Iron Man's helmet, cracking the armor and tearing away Tony's mask. Tony is helpless. Steve raises the shield one final time. For a moment, it looks like he's about to bring it down on Tony's head. Instead, he changes course at the last second and drives the shield directly into Iron Man's arc reactor. The suit immediately powers down and the fight is over. Steve helps Bucky to his feet and the two begin limping toward the exit. Behind them, Tony can only watch. "You don't deserve that shield," he says. "My dad made that shield." Steve stops, looks down at the symbol he has carried since World War II, and lets it fall to the ground. Then he and Bucky walk away. The Avengers are finished. As Iron Man, Captain America, and the Winter Soldier tear each other apart, Zemo watches from a distance. His plan has worked. The Avengers have destroyed themselves. Not through brute force, not through an alien invasion, but from within. With his revenge complete, Zemo prepares to take his own life and join his family. But before he can pull the trigger, T'Challa steps from the shadows and stops him. Unknown to Tony, Steve, and Bucky, T'Challa secretly followed Tony to the Siberian facility. After spending the entire film consumed by a desire to avenge his father, T'Challa has finally realized something. Revenge doesn't heal anything. It only creates more victims. Refusing to let Zemo die on his own terms, T'Challa takes him into custody. Zemo's arrested, but he doesn't seem disappointed, because despite being behind bars, he won. The Avengers are shattered, and the damage may never be repaired. In the weeks that follow, the damage from the airport battle becomes clear. Rhodey survives his fall, but the injuries leave him partially paralyzed. With the help of advanced technology designed by Tony Stark, he begins learning to walk again using robotic leg braces. Tony returns to Avengers headquarters. The team he helped build is gone, and the divide between him and Steve has never been greater. The remaining members of Team Captain America remain imprisoned inside the raft, but not for long. Steve secretly infiltrates the prison and frees his allies, allowing them to disappear into hiding. As for Bucky, Steve brings him to Wakanda. There, King T'Challa offers him sanctuary and the resources of Wakandan science. Knowing he could still be a danger to others if Hydra's programming is ever activated again, Bucky makes a difficult choice. He voluntarily enters cryogenic sleep once more, remaining frozen until Wakanda's scientists can find a way to remove Hydra's brainwashing forever. Back in Queens, Peter Parker experiments with the upgraded web shooters Tony Stark gave him during the airport battle. As he discovers new features hidden within the suit, it's clear that his journey as Spider-Man is only just beginning. The Avengers may be broken, but their story is far from over. With the Avengers fractured, Earth's mightiest heroes begin going their separate ways. T'Challa returns to Wakanda where he must bury his father and take his place as king in Black Panther. Peter Parker heads back to Queens waiting for the next call from Tony Stark before taking center stage in Spider-Man Homecoming. Scott Lang accepts a deal with the government, leading directly into Ant-Man and the Wasp. Natasha Romanoff finds herself on the run setting up the events of Black Widow. And while some heroes disappear into the shadows, Steve Rogers and Sam Wilson continue fighting the good fight without the Avengers. Because now the Avengers are gone, and when the next world-ending threat arrives, Earth's heroes won't face it together. They'll have to face it divided. A division that will have massive consequences in Avengers Infinity War. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Marvel recaps. And remember, we're here to watch the realities and guide you through the timelines.